Tommaso, going back to you on this, so you've recently written on digital currencies, and we're shamelessly promoting your paper, which is so good. In fact, John told me this before we got up here, said how good it was, so you should read it. One, we'd like to know, since you've been involved in the G7 working group on GSC, what are the main risks that you associate with GSC? What are the big concerns that the international community have about that?
Yeah.
Does everyone know what GSC stands for?
Global stablecoins. Global stablecoins. So these are stablecoins that have a global adoption, introduced by a big tech firm, for instance, that already has a very large installed base, but not necessarily. And the risks that we've been writing about at the IMF are multiple. So besides the benefits of stablecoins, we recognize that there are large potential benefits. We also point out very significant risks. These risks are to consumer protection to start with. So remember that stablecoins are backed by assets. They're a private liability of a private firm backed by private assets. So multiple risks. One, that the issuer defaults. And two, of course, related to the assets that back the coin. So market risk, liquidity risk, foreign exchange rate risk. You are exposed to those risks as a user. And the question is whether you understand fully those risks, whether you can get your money back in the case of default of the issuer, whether you really have a legal claim or not against the underlying assets of the stablecoin. Those are important risks to consumer protection. Now, of course, if consumers start to have a doubt as to their ability to redeem, remember we spoke about the importance of redemption in defining stablecoins, there could be a run on stablecoins. And a run on stablecoins could induce large sales of assets and precipitate prices of those assets. That has financial stability implications. Financial stability implications are also related to the disintermediation of the banking sector. You currently hold your money in various instruments, including bank deposits, and that's what you use to make payments. If you start to make payments with stablecoins, you might move your money out of a bank account. That would reduce the funding of banks, certainly the stable and cheap funding of banks, and that could have financial stability implications as well. We believe that banks have means to fight back, of course, and to retain customer deposits by increasing interest rates on deposits and offering better payment services, but there is the potential for a large disintermediation of the banking sector. That's financial stability. We also very briefly speak about integrity risks, so risks to anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism, risks to privacy, risks of creating new monopolies. We have to understand that these providers, these large providers of stablecoins, operate almost like natural monopolies because of the very strong network effects. Right? The fact that you use these coins makes these coins more useful for me, that's a network effect. And the fact that there are very large sunk costs to developing these platforms makes these new monopolies very hard to regulate. And finally, I'll just raise a risk which was discussed before as a benefit, although countries see it as a major risk, and that is the risk of currency substitution. If you're in a country with high inflation, volatile exchange rates, weak institutions, you might want to hold the dollar more easily through the intermediary of a stablecoin provider. If that's the case, that country loses, if that's the case on a large scale, that country loses its ability to influence monetary policy. That's a problem to the country. It may not be a problem to the citizens of that country, but it's a problem to that country. So lots of risks that come up, some of which can be tackled by existing regulation, some of which will have to be tackled by new regulation, and some of which are just difficult to tackle with regulation, period, like the risk of currency substitution. So we need to think about, as in the international community, think about ways to assuage those risks as well. It's not easy.